Hey friend, Kim Rimby here with KP Mathematics, and I am so excited that you decided to join us for this Math Fact Fluency workshop series. This is the first of 3 workshops, and in our time together, we're really going to be talking about the journey that we need to take as teachers in order to help our students travel down the pathway towards fluency. And it's really important to know that we're not just talking about developing the math facts from the very beginning, although that's part of it. We're going to be talking about developing math facts, internalizing them to the point of automaticity, and then maintaining math facts over time. So no matter what grade level you're working with, your students fall in that journey somewhere along the line. So I encourage you to hang out with me for all 3 sessions. You'll be so glad that you did. So first off, you might want to capture this. This is a QR code that will take you to a landing page where you'll have access to the slide deck. You'll have access to a handout that you can, a note-taking guide that you can use to take notes over the course of today's workshop, and there'll be a new note guide for each session, and a few other links that I thought would be helpful for you. Also, for this session, it would be most beneficial for you to have paper to write on, some kind of something to write with. I always prefer to use markers because first off, we know the research behind using color to help us with memory, but also it's just a little bit more fun to write with them. And the same is true for your students. And then I also encourage you just to have your phone handy so you can just take some snippets, whether you take it with your phone or just take snippets from this presentation and add those to the notes that you are taking along the way. And then finally, I also want to invite you, especially for session 1, to have manipulatives handy. If you have KP 10 frame tiles, that's a great place to start. But those aren't necessary for this workshop. You can use anything. You can use any kind of counters, color tiles. Snap cubes are particularly good, especially when we get into the multiplication and division. Let's just chat a little bit about what you're going to get out of this 3-workshop series. First of all, I want to make sure that it's super clear that we're going to explore why it's so important to help our students go down this journey. Now, so many of the strategies that we're talking about in these 3 workshops, honestly, are all over the place. These are the same strategies that you read about in Jennifer Bay Williams and John Sangiovanni's book. You read about these strategies in Julie Dixon's book, in Sue O'Connell's book, in Dr. Nikki Newton's book. She wrote that along with Annalise Record. So these strategies tend to be the same across the literature. And what we're going to add in this series is really that whole notion of how do you help students move down that trajectory from using counting strategies to using mental math strategies, and then really getting to the point of being fluent with their math facts. We develop those ideas early on in grades 2 and 3. And then we need to continue to work on math fact maintenance for our students to continue to be successful. So I invite you to stick with this because no matter where you're at, you're going to have students who need to revisit conceptual understanding. You'll have students who need to revisit the idea of being flexible with the strategies that they used. And let's be honest, if you're a 5th grade teacher or a 6th grade teacher, and you have students who were fluent with their addition and subtraction facts 4 years ago in 2nd grade. Is there any reason to believe they're still fluent if they haven't really done something to maintain that fluency? So this is for all of us. So today we're really going to talk about the importance of making math facts visible, using visible tools, visual tools that help the kids think about the math facts and talk about the math facts in ways that will be productive for them. So when we're talking about math fact fluency, I think it's important for us to open up the broader picture momentarily and just take a look at the fact that we're talking about more than just math fact fluency. We're also talking about computational fluency. We need our students to be fluent with their math facts so that they're able to apply them in new situations. When we start working with multi-digit numbers, when we're doing operations with addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, whole numbers, decimals, working with fractions, If our students know their math facts, they're going to have greater access to these more complex ideas. And then we also want our students to have problem-solving fluency. So very often when I'm thinking of reading, we have fluency in reading, right? And fluency, when children are fluent readers, that means that they can read with expression, they read with prosody, that they don't stumble over every little word, and that leads to comprehension. It's not the same thing as comprehension, but it leads to comprehension. The same thing is true with math when it comes to math facts. When our students are fluent with their math facts, it allows them to get to problem solving at a greater level. Now, problem solving fluency is a bigger idea. We want kids to have a lot of different strategies and be able to be fluent with different problem solving strategies and know what's accurate, what's going to lead to accuracy and efficiency. And having math fact fluency is a really big part of that. And that's what we're going to focus on in this series, knowing that it helps our students get to fluency in other areas as well. Something else to be really in touch with is this notion that when we're talking about math fact fluency, it has three ingredients. Those three ingredients are accuracy, efficiency, and flexibility. Now, that's also true with computational fluency and with problem-solving fluency. But what we mean by these three ingredients is number one, accuracy is important. We want to make sure that our students are using strategies and structures that help them get to the correct solution, of course, whether you're adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing. Then we also want to make sure that we're focusing on strategies that are going to be efficient. We don't want our kids counting by ones if they're multiplying 7 times 8, right? Or drawing sticks. Even adding 7 plus 8 or subtracting 18 minus 10. If they're counting backwards and they're counting by ones as they count backwards, that is no longer an efficient strategy. It's a strategy that works, and it was helpful in the beginning as we were developing our math fact ideas. But when we're trying to move towards being fluent, we need something that's more efficient. And then finally, this notion of flexibility is a really big idea. We're going to talk about flexibility a lot in workshop 3. And this notion that when our students are able to think about their math facts in a lot of different ways, they're able to lean into their number sense. And their number sense can help them see relationships between and among numbers. And that helps them with their fluency as well. So accuracy and efficiency, we're really going to be talking about today and workshop 1 and workshop 2. And then flexibility is where we're going to focus when we get to workshop 3. So just for a moment, I would like you to grab a Post-it note, grab a piece of paper, or even in the note-taking guide, if you downloaded that, just take a moment to brainstorm with yourself. What are the math tools that your students have access to in your classroom? Just quickly, just write down 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 things. What kinds of tools do your students have access to that help them with their math? Not exclusive to math facts, just what are the tools that they have? Because we want to make sure when we're developing conceptual understanding that our students do indeed have access to tools that will help them develop the number sense, will help them really lean into number relationships and start seeing how they can use the thinking strategies, but we want them to be able to see those thinking strategies in front of them. So when you're thinking about what are the different tools your kids have available to them, hopefully you're thinking about more than just manipulatives. Although manipulatives, that's a big part of it, right? Those are the physical tools that our students can use to move things around and figure out the solutions. We also want to make sure our students have access to visual representations, whether it's number bonds or 10 frames or number lines or tape diagrams or tables or even virtual manipulatives. Although you can move those around, they are 2 dimensions. They're not physical tools, right? So we want to make sure our kids have access to those as well. And then also just knowing how to use the symbol system, whether we're using it as labels in our number bonds or on our number lines, or actually writing expressions and equations. Then we also want our kids to have access to verbal tools. explaining their reasoning, explaining their thinking, explaining the strategies that they just used. That also will serve them well. And finally, being able to use context in a way that is very fluent. Because what is mathematics? Math is a language that we use to describe and solve problems in the world around us. So we want to make sure that our students have access to being able to conceptualize the math that they're working on. So these are the 5 different kinds of tools we need our kids to have access to in our classrooms on a daily basis. Now, I also want to emphasize that although there's 5 kinds of tools that you see listed here, there's 5 different buckets, if you will. It's not the buckets that is the really important idea here. The important idea here are the arrows. We want kids to be able to make connections between those physical tools and the visual tools, between the visual tools and the verbal tools to the symbolic tools to contextual tools. All of those arrows are bidirectional, and it's those connections that push our kids to think. That's when they're using number sense and number relationships and really able to dig into the thinking that goes into understanding conceptually what's going on with math facts, and that will in turn lead to becoming fluent with mental math strategies, and that will in turn lead to having automaticity and fluency with the math facts. So this diagram, which is actually called the less translation diagram for representations, there's 2 different ones you can see here. This is something I actually introduced to students so that they're aware that they have a lot of different tools to choose from. So I just encourage you to use these with your students, but also just use these as a tool for yourself to think through how am I going to make sure that my students have access to all the tools they need. So that's the beginning of workshop 1. If you're ready to dive in, the next video is going to focus in on addition and subtraction strategies using physical tools. So here you can see I have KP10 frame tiles that I'm going to be using in this video, but know that this is not the only tool. Anything I show you today can be done with snap cubes, with counters. You might want to draw some 10 frames, some number lines to be able to help kids understand these ideas. The point here is just making the math facts visible for the kids. So make sure you have some manipulatives handy, grab some paper, grab some markers, and then come back and we'll jump into the addition and subtraction strategies. See you back here in a moment.